Hi all, my name is Sarah Heason and I'm really just here to welcome you and to say hello this evening on behalf of the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Early Years Stronger Practice Hub. We are the group that have set up this evening's session, and we're delighted to welcome Rachel Mortlock, who is hosting a number of CPL training sessions for us, and we're really glad that you can join this particular one. Rachel is going to be focusing this evening on purposeful adult interactions and deployment. You are a group that I hope if you're in this space, you are joining us from the PVI sector, from a nursery sector, and this session is aimed particularly at managers and leaders. So that's the people that we hope are with us this evening. We are running a whole range of other sessions with Rachel, which we'll put a link to in the chat in case you're interested. There are some follow-up sessions that are relevant for other colleagues that are working in your settings, and we are looking at things like the early years environment, outdoor learning, etc. as part of this series with Rachel. Rachel comes to us with a huge amount of experience and expertise across the early years and supporting children in their development. So I'm not going to take too much time other than to say we're really delighted that you've heard about us in whatever way. Please do feel free to share with other colleagues information about the Early Years Stronger Practice Hubs. We're here to do a whole range of things, including support you in networking with other colleagues that work in the sector. We're here to share research and best practice. We're here to provide CPL and training for you. And we're here to signpost to other support and activities and to take queries. So if there's anything else that we can do to support you in your work with our youngest children in your care, please do drop us a note. There's Susanna is also on the screen. And Susanna is one of the people that puts out our newsletter on a regular basis. We can put a note in the chat for you that is our information line. It is a place where you can just jump online and put a query in. And we'll get back to you. We're here to help or signpost for all things for early years colleagues, because the work that you do is so really important for our children. So I'll hand over to Rachel now. It's a real pleasure to meet you. Thanks ever so much for giving your time this evening. There'll be a small break in the middle for teas, coffees, comfort break, that type of thing. And we'll, like I say, we'll be recording the session, so we'll get that copy out to you if you want to share it with other colleagues and enjoy that as part of an ongoing conversation in your setting at a later time.
My name's Rachel Mortlock. So, gosh, I originally started trained as a nursery teacher and then worked in numerous schools before eventually becoming early years strategic lead for a large local authority. We had about 350 schools and about 350 PVI settings, and then responsibility for childminders as well as part of that. And then I went on to be a senior regional advisor for the national strategies, and now I'm an independent advisor. So I'm really delighted to be able to meet you all tonight. During the course of the evening, as we've explained, we'll have a break partway in. We're going to show you quite a lot of videos as well as part of that. The videos are all taken from something called a company called Siren Films, and the Early Years Network has got a sign up for that, and they'll be able to share the link with you. But also, as one of the reasons that I put them in is with Siren Films, you can sign up and have a free 30-day trial with your email address. So if you're interested in that, you will be able to access all of the videos that we've looked at afterwards. And there's also a large number of other videos of all aspects of early years practice on there. As we said earlier, please feel free to keep your cameras switched off. You don't need to have them switched on as part of today, and I will be keeping mine on for most of the time, but I will definitely switch it off when we're going to look at some of the videos as part of that. So I'll just move it a little bit out of the way. It's not working, but we'll go with that. So here today to talk about purposeful adult interactions and deployments in continuous provision, enhanced provision and play. And I thought it would just be helpful about the definition of continuous and enhanced provision, because I've actually used the Flying High trust definition, but you might use something different within your setting. So continuous provision is, in this context, is a selection of carefully considered resources that are easily accessible at all times to enable children to explore, rehearse and consolidate their learning. So continuous provision. And enhanced provision is when you have a focused invitation to play based upon a knowledge or skill that requires development. So more adult directed in terms of that. And it can be predetermined learning or reactive to the children's needs. And that would work in addition to the continuous provision. So that's the phraseology that we're using within this, but you might use something different, and we're going to explore that a little bit as we go through. Right, so ideally, using the chat, if you can, I want you to have a think about, just for 1 minute, and if you could possibly type in the chat, about what type of interactions do you have with your children in your setting across the day, and where do those interactions mostly take place? So if you can very quickly have a think about that, you might just scribble it down on a piece of paper while you're thinking about it for yourself, or if you could type in the chat, that would be great. So we can see them coming up when greeting them at the start of the day. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, but the importance of building opportunities to have interactions with children into everyday routines is really important. Meal times and during activities. We're going to look at a lovely video of some engagement during meal times as part of them. Again, greetings and meal times, handovers and lunch times coming up. Talking about their play, craft activities and lunchtime. Nappy chat, is it? It says nappy chat, but nappy changes, nappy changes coming through again, transitions, personal care, activities, meal times, nappy time coming through, outdoors. Anything else given when they come into the office and say hello and have conversations on their way outside or to the bathroom? So yeah, all of those things, I think we can see that interactions with focus group times, there's some more coming through throughout the whole day. I think that absolutely sums up, that comment sums up what we're going to talk about. So the importance of interactions throughout the whole day, that they take place constantly. And you're absolutely right. You've put whether this be through gestures, facial expressions, words or body language. Interactions take place all the time, and they're not all verbal. You know, it is that importance of that tuning into children, that connection, that smiling. I always say that as an adult, I spend quite a lot of time traveling on public transport and buses. And imagine when you get onto a bus and you're looking for somewhere to sit down, and the difference between the person who sort of smiles at you as if, come and sit next to me, to the person who sort of looks at you as if, please, you know, they don't want you visibly to sit next to them. And even to us as adults, it's the importance of that, that non-verbal communication that makes us feel valued, and it makes us feel wanted, and it makes us want to communicate with that person. And one of the things that we need to think about is, are we, when we have our interactions with our children and with each other, what kind of interactions are they? Are we spending a lot of time just monitoring or policing children, or are we are we spending our time taking photographs of them, or are we actually managing to get to a point where we manage to have really deep interactions with children? And that's one of the things that we're going to look at as we go through the course this evening. And quite often we function a lot, we focus a lot on the functional vocabulary or the functional interactions, so the things that we need to get children through the day. So it might be time to wash your hands. And so how do we manage to get beyond that and into those really deeper interactions when we can really tune in and engage to those children? Because we know that from birth onwards, children want to interact with us. And the research on the very youngest babies show that babies seek out that contact with adults, and they want to interact through body language and facial expressions. So how we smile, the songs that we sing, the care that we show, and you talked a lot about nappies and those care times as part of that. How we read a book, or even the way we move, they're all interactions with children. And so one of the things that I always try to think about is, how does each interaction enhance the experience of the child? I think it's a really important thing. The DfE have a reading framework for, I mean, it is primarily geared towards schools, but it talks around EYFS and then goes into Key Stage 1 and now moves up from there. But it talks about a language-rich environment is one in which adults talk to children throughout the day. And the more children take part in conversations, the more it prepares them to develop that vocabulary to support them to become more confident readers and writers as they go through. So I'm going to share this with you. This is, you might have seen some of this before, but this is the DfE funded something called the EPI project, which was the longest study into looking at the quality of early years provision across a whole different range of settings. So it looked at PVI, it looked at schools, it looked at childminders as part of that. And the research that came from that informed the previous government. So up until 2009, it informed the Labour government at that point's policy in terms of early years. And it informed the writing of the EYFS framework in 2006, and subsequent versions fed into that as well as part of that. And they found that the most effective practice, when we're looking at really high quality practice, what sits at the top, at the absolute centre of that, is those pedagogical interventions, those face-to-face interactions that children experience when they're within an early years setting. And they found that in the most effective settings, children were interacting with either other children or adults for about 70% of their time whilst they were experiencing all areas of the curriculum. Interesting, they found that one of the times that the interaction was less was when adults were reading stories to children, and we're going to have a look at that and how we can really enhance that experience as we go through as part of that. So if we want to have really high quality early years practice, then what's got to sit at the centre of it is the importance of those really high quality face-to-face interactions. And what the research said, and I put a link in if you want to have a look at it, but what the research talked about was that the number of the interaction was there were most interactions when we were thinking about one-to-one interactions and engagement with children. And if we think, so the highest quality interactions took place then. And as we move into bigger groups of children, and in this case, they talked about whole class or small group, we found that it moved much more into, it moved away from some of that really high quality dialogue and interaction, that sustained shared thinking. And sustained shared thinking, you might have heard about that. It's come back into the latest version of the EYFS statutory framework, but it talks about and into the development matters, and it talks about when two or more adults or two or more individuals work together to solve a problem. So that might be clarifying a concept, and we're going to look at some videos that have some really good examples in terms of that. But it's when both of the participants, whether that's two children or two adults or an adult and a child, work together to contribute ideas and thoughts which take the learning forward in terms of that through conversation and through dialogue as part of that. So if we're looking for those really high quality interactions which extend learning, they found that they happened much more in one-to-one situations, and the larger the number of groups, the larger the groups got, the less likely they were to happen, and the more likely it was to move into interactions which were more about monitoring children or more about sort of monitoring situations within the environment. So I think that's the first interesting thing to think about when we're thinking about planning, when we're thinking about how we have high quality interactions with children. Do we make sure that we value those one-to-one interactions with children as much as we value those small group or larger group interactions when we're going through and thinking about that? So how do children learn? Children learn, so if we're thinking about how children learn and thinking about that a little bit more, what the research says is that for the most effective learning to take place, children need a mixture of these things. And so they might need some unstructured time play without any adult support, to a certain extent, because we design the learning environment that those children are going to be in. We're already influencing how they're going to play within it. But the most effective learning happens when we're looking within this green zone here. So when it's a mixture of child-initiated play, so that's when adult support within an enabling environment or that continuous provision with sensitive adult interactions as part of that. And when adults are guiding playful experiential learning activities. So if we go back to that flying high definition at the front, it's when it's happening in that continuous and in that enhanced provision. And we might also have some activities that are more structured, which are adult directed or with little or no play, but it says very clearly in terms of the EY statutory framework that we'd expect children to be moving more into that as they move into reception and become older. They have more of that focus on teaching the explicit skills and knowledge in the specific areas of learning. And so what the research said was that it's not enough for to create a stimulating environment and let children play. Adults need to actively teach children. And when we talk about teaching, it's not that top-down hierarchical model in terms of that. We are all teachers and teaching children when we're working with children, and it's about those interactions during the day. It's about how we communicate and model language, how we show things to children, how we explain, how we demonstrate, how we explore ideas with them, about how we question, how we get them to recall. We're going to look, as we look at some of the videos today, there's a really strong focus on getting children to talk about events that have happened in their past, whether that's immediate or their deeper past in terms of that, and how we manage to provide a narrative for what children are doing and how we're facilitating and setting challenges for them. So if we are thinking about all of this, it leads to us thinking about, so how do we, what do we need to do in order to be able to plan an environment that enables this to take place? And you might have seen this idea before, but if we want to get this balance of children learning through play, through adults modelling, through guided learning and through direct teaching, then we need to have an enabling environment that's going to allow that. And that's a really interesting idea, because we talk a lot about how we want children to be in stimulating environments. We'll talk a lot about stimulating and engaging early years environment. But actually, if we want to plan an environment for communication, we need to have a balance. And one of the things that, if we go back to that focus that some of the best engagement takes place when we're looking at one-to-one or small group, or children might be working in pairs or working with an adult as part of that, then how do we make sure that our space and our setting enables this? And do we make sure that we've got space to sometimes have quieter spaces where children can sit one-to-one with an adult, or where they can sit with a small group, or where they can just talk to each other? And this is the idea, you might have heard this idea or seen this before, but it's the idea of a heat map. And so it's very, very simple to do. What you do is it helps you to consider if you've got enough time and space for children to be having the kind of conversations with adults and with each other. So you draw a really simple map of your setting. It doesn't need to be anything complicated at all. And you very roughly mark on where the areas are as part of that. And at different points throughout the day, you put a red cross if you want, or a hot spot if you see really good dialogue going on with children. Or so where is it that children are really talking to each other and really talking to adults? And you put a blue mark if there really isn't any conversation there. And it helps you to look at those areas in the classroom or in your space, in your setting, where children are having the strongest level of conversation and dialogue. And why that can be really useful is you might find out that it's not where you expect it to be. And if we're planning for conversation, we also need to leave space for quieter spaces within it. And quite often I'll go into a setting and you'll find that a space that might be quieter, like the book corner, will be right next to the sand or the water or the role play, which is a really noisy area. And so sometimes when we think about how we plan the environment, it's about thinking about where we put the individual areas that we want to put in place to enable that conversation and enable that space for conversation. And some of you may be in settings where you have to get out, the equipment every day as part of that as well. So thinking about how could we maybe make small changes which are going to allow better spaces for children to talk. And you can do this from memory if you want. You don't have to do it during the course of the day. You can sort of audit from memory as part of that. And there's some really interesting research which looks at the impact of noise in the environment as well. And one of the things it talks quite a bit about it talks a little bit about in that DFE reading, but it also sort of hints around it in some of the Ofsted stuff as well, about calm environments that have the space to enable that talk as part of that. And I've been doing a really interesting project with a nursery. And when we started doing the work with the nursery, it's quite a big space, and it has a big hectic outdoor space as well. And when we first went in and looked at that nursery, what we found was that there wasn't great adult interaction, and the children also weren't particularly talking to each other. A lot of the children are quite young, and they're sort of 2- and 3-year-olds mostly, and some 4-year-olds. But they also, a lot of the children have English as an additional language as part of that. So they're at the very early stages of learning English. And one of the things where we just stood back and watched, and it's an absolute luxury for you as a leader or for me as an advisor, just to be able to go into a setting and stand back and watch and spend some time sitting at the side and see what is actually happening here. And one of the things that we noticed was they had a really large interactive whiteboard, and it was in the middle of the room and it had a sort of carpet space in front of it. And the intention had been really good. And the children really enjoyed using it. They were sort of, large mark making with it and art on it, and that had been the intention of it. But what had happened over time was that it had drifted, and what they found in it when they looked at it in more detail was that it was increasingly being used to sort of show songs on it, or to have children dancing along, or to have stories told on it, rather than the adult reading the story to the children or playing the story to the children. And what they found was that there was almost constantly a noise in the space, and they found that the majority of the children were sort of congregating in this area, and actually their play was really low quality. So the first step that they did as part of that was they switched it off. The children were, it's gone, as you can imagine, as part of that. But what they did at the same time was really start to develop the space around it and really look at how they could plan the areas of provision to make sure that adults were out in the areas of provision, and the focus of the adult or the task that the adult was given was go into this area and talk to the children. And they found that very quickly, when the adults were out in the areas of provision and they were engaged and they were active in the activities, the children very quickly forgot that they didn't have the large video screen, and they started using the environment much more. and we're only partway through the project. We only started it in September, but there is already a marked difference in the quality of the language and the amount of language going in that setting. Another thing that they did was they had a book area that was in a sort of one of those arcs. And because it was quite a low arc, what happened was that adults couldn't actually get into it. So children were sort of crawling in there to look at books, which was great. But actually, they didn't have that opportunity to sit and share a book with an adult. So they've looked at how to create those spaces. They've looked at how to they've looked completely at a sort of their malleable area, materials area. And they've also looked at their role play. So they're carrying on looking at it in terms of that. And their most recent step is, after the whiteboard went, they played music. And we looked at some research. There's different research that says playing music can be very calming. And some research says that playing music can limit the amount of conversation. But the next step that we're at is they've decided in the last couple of weeks, they've removed the music. So they don't have music playing in the setting anymore. And they're now monitoring to see whether the quality of an amount of conversation goes up as a result of that as well. So it's about having a fresh look, I think, at your setting and saying, okay, where is it that this really high quality interaction is taking place? And is there anything that's a barrier to it? So, so in this case, the things that were definitely the barriers were the large interactive whiteboard. We think it was the music, we're about to find that out. It was that there wasn't a quiet book space where adults could sit and share a book with children as part of that. And it was also that I think because all the children were congregating in the middle around this large screen, a lot of adult time was spent on monitoring and policing that, and sort of managing conflict in that area. Whereas when that was gone as an area, and the adults have more time to interact with the children out in the areas of provision. So doing this heat map, this sort of identifying areas where the conversation is, opportunities for conversation and interactions are really strong, and then those areas where they're not so effective can be really helpful in helping and supporting you to plan your provision. We talk about an engaging and stimulating environment and how we engage and encourage conversation. These are from a couple of, one's a 2-year-old, no, they're 3-year-old provisions, one's and nursery provisions going through. The one with the maps actually a reception class. But these settings don't theme, so they're permanently set up, but they don't theme in terms of that. What they do is they create areas of stimulus to create conversation. But what's really important is if you went into these areas within these settings, certainly when these areas are introduced, there is an adult there to talk about the language with the child. So it isn't just a beautiful display that sits there. What makes this very successful in this setting is that it is the quality of the adult, and that it's a really high priority that adults go and sit there. They introduce the vocabulary to the children, and they're there to talk to children about the interests. And then what they notice is after a period of time, the adult will spend less time there, and there will be children talking to other children about it. So if we're talking about children spending 70% of their time talking to adults and other children, it's really important that we teach children how to hold conversations with other children and how to lead on those conversations. And we're not just teaching them to have conversations with adults. So as these areas progress, what you'll see is children sitting and talking to each other about this because they're familiar with the vocabulary and they know how to use all of the resources as part of that. So one of the questions that we often get is how do we support children who need more help? And we're going to have a look at a video in a minute, and it's a meal time, and it's got children of different ages in it. And some of the strategies that help us, because some children have, well, children have different experiences before they come to you, don't they? And some children will come from much more language-rich homes than other children. And some children, you know, they might have more siblings as part of that. They might be more more used to holding conversations with other children. But there are some children who need lots of help and support in order to support them with conversations. And I was on an aeroplane last summer, and it was a 3-hour flight. And opposite me on this 3-hour flight, there was a mum and dad, and there was a little girl, and she was about 3.5, I would say. She was absolutely immaculately turned out. She had a little pink bag when she got on, and in her little pink bag, she had a little toy and a water bottle. And they got on the plane and they sat opposite me, and they made sure that she was strapped in, and they made sure she was okay. And when they were taking off, she watched a little thing with no sound on, very considerately on her mum's phone for a few minutes. And throughout the journey, she sort of sat there very quietly with her little teddy. And then when they were coming into land, they opened the little bag, they offered her drink, and she had her drink. They asked if she wanted to go to the toilet, she didn't. And then as they were coming into land, they got her little lollipop out and sort of gave her the lollipop to suck. But they didn't explain why. And when I sat there and thought about it, the entire conversation for that little girl on that plane was completely functional. She was very well cared for, but it was completely about, do you want a drink? Do you want your lolly? Do you want, and I just thought it was such a lost opportunity for conversation, because she was there on the aeroplane with so much happening. The opportunities for conversation about what's happening during the takeoff and landing, even how we're strapping in as part of that. The questions about where do you think we're going? What's it going to be like when we're going to get there? Do you remember when you went on an aeroplane last time? Do you know why we're going to be coming into land? You're going to suck your lollipop because you might feel a funny sound in your ears as you're coming down to land. And it just struck me that we need to help parents as well, to enable them to be able to support their children, and to be able to enable them to have those high quality conversations with their children as well. And one of the things that if you have a look at Siren Films, they have lots of videos of children in homes as well, and there are some really good videos to share with parents as part of that. But some of the strategies that we're going to see in the video that we're going to have a look at that support children who may need more help is about making the question concrete. So a real question to which they have to answer. We might talk about, we're going to talk about open and closed questions as we go through, but make it really practical and based on their own personal experiences. About talking about recent events or objects can really help children who need more help in interactions and conversations. About prioritizing familiar vocabulary, so really using that vocabulary that they're already familiar with and getting them to use that in their conversations. About providing a narrative, you'll be really familiar with this, about talking alongside a child and providing a narrative for what you're doing, and about commenting on what's happening. And I always think to see some lovely examples of this if you're maybe watching adults playing with Play-Doh with children. So you might see the adult, working alongside the child with their lump of Play-Doh, and as soon as you start doing that, you'll get a gathering of children around you, I'm sure. But sitting there with the child, and you're talking about what you're doing as you're doing it. So you're talking about how you're rolling and how you're kneading and how you're pulling, and you're building that vocabulary in. And it's that bit about being just one step ahead of the child almost in terms of that. So you're not sitting there with your Play-Doh making the most amazing 3D sculpture of a bowl of fruit, are you? You're not working at that level as an adult, you're working just slightly beyond where that child is and at that level of that child, so that child can copy you. And as you go through and do that, you're talking and commenting about what's happening and what you're doing in terms of that all the way through. So we're going to share a video now going through. And this is a mealtime in a setting which you'll see. If we've practiced this and it worked in terms of you being able to see and hear it, if for any reason you can't, just put a note in the chat.
Okay. Because of With your fork up, right? Can you feel it cutting? Have a go like that, just like when we got the soil. And again, into a smaller piece. In and cut it. Well done. Fantastic. That's brilliant. That's how you do it, just like that. That's it. Big spoon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's the right spoon for carrots? No, should we try a different spoon? We just try a smaller spoon. Try that. Can I just take that out of it? That better. So what about you? What have you been to do this morning?
I just go by the I just go talk up on beach.
In the beach? What did you do in the beach?
I just get sand in the water.
Where did you get in the water from? In the garden? I didn't, was there no water in the garden? Oh, did it sand or wet? I saw some children getting some water from the corner over there. Oh, don't know what that thing is over there. In the corner beside the cabinet.
Yes, nothing.
A water tank. Is that what it is? How does the water get into the water tank? Oh, that wasn't there before we went on holiday, was it? From the pipe, so the water comes from the pipe into the tank. How does the water get into the pipe? Oh, that one. Oh, right, so the rain comes down, goes in the pipe, then the pipe feeds into the tank, and then we get water from the tank when we need it. That's a really good idea. If we need lots to eat, because we've got lots to do this afternoon. What is it?
I don't know.
You don't know what it is? Cabbage. You must have had cabbage at home. You must have had cabbage in your house.
I like
You liked it when you were a baby, so why don't you like it now? It's my favourite vegetable, cabbage. Bread rhymes with bread. Bread, Brit for bread. Brenda. Brit, that's a Brit, yeah. I know a Brit, that's a vegetable. Brussels sprout. And then, are you sure you're finished? Right, you can straight your plate. I think you can eat a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Jude, are you waiting to get some bread? Yes. And remember to hold your plate with and spread it with the book. Yes. Yes, you can. Keep going out and scraping it all off. Eat all of the food off. We put them in the dishwasher, don't we? Okay. No. Right, where's the little thing to go? Well done. Where did your plate go? That's right. Oh, well done. Brilliant.
So have a think about it and type in the chat if you can. What did you notice in that she was doing, that practitioner was doing to support those children in terms of the interactions that she had with them and the conversation? So very quickly, if you can, just into the chat, what did you notice from that? So I'll read them out for open-ended questions, relating it to their personal experiences, taking time to listen to the children and valued their input. I don't know whether you heard in the background, you heard one of the other practitioners say to the children, well done, you're remembering. So when I talked in the last slide about, you know, relating it to their personal experiences, what they've just done as well, rather than as well as things in their past as part of that. She was extending their language, wasn't she? Developing their skills, teaching the new vocabulary, reminding them about the vegetables, but also encouraging them to think about some of those words that sounded the same as part of that. Anything else? I think the thing that struck me most was about the importance of the relationship, the mutual trust and respect that you saw, and the way she talked to the children. She was genuinely interested about what they were saying. You've put the valuing their input, I say that. And there was some research done in 2017 that talked about there's an increasing recognition that the relationship a child has with a caregiver, that's both the importance that it needs to be both sensitive and stimulating, is the central and most critical component of early care and education. So it's that importance of having that sensitive and stimulating relationship. She'd really tuned into the children as part of that. And we could really see her. And what was quite interesting in that video, I think, is the children were all they were all at different levels of their development. And she spoke to you know, each of them at a slightly different level in terms of it. And what we don't know, of course, that's only a snapshot filmed. It's absolutely impossible to film children. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to film children for various organisations. It's a really hard thing to do. But I know that some of the settings that I work with, when they have that kind of family dining, one of the things that they do is that they rotate the children who are sitting next to the adult during the course of a week, so that actually, because she did definitely concentrate on some of the children more than the others, but so that all of the children get to be close to that adult at some part during the week, and the adult focuses in on the children who are closer to them during that conversation, during that meal, to stimulate the conversation as part of that, and to make sure that there's opportunities for high quality dialogue for all of the children across the course of a week or across the course of a period of time. We're going to talk a little bit about how adults join in with sorry, I was just looking at the chat as a message had come up, but that's fine. About how adults join in with play with children. And I always remember when I was a nursery teacher, I was playing with a group of 3-year-olds, and we don't always get it right when we're working with children. So I went to try and join in their play, and they were in a home role play situation. So I did all of the things that we're meant to do. So wait to be invited into the play. Santa said, can I come and play? Can I come and join in with you? So I said to them, can I come and play? And they sort of looked at me slightly head to one side. And I was used to getting the role of the dog. That was the role that I usually was. It was, yes, you can come and play, and you're the dog. As part of that. So I looked at, and they were engaged in their play, and I said, can I come and play? And one of them tilted his head to me and went, yes, you're the television. You can come and play, you're the television. And then another child went, and you're switched off. And so obviously, clearly what they meant is, no, we don't want you to come in and play with us at that point. And I think the thing is, we get it wrong all the time. And we know that if we jump in and that sometimes when we jump into those situations with the absolute best of intentions, we can halt or stop the play, or we can reduce the quality of that play in terms of what we're doing. And that's something that I find really frustrating in my role, because I don't know the children in most of the settings that I visit. I'm desperate to sort of join in and interact with their play. But because I don't have that close personal relationship with them, what I find is that sometimes it can really cut down and stop their play. And I had an example. It was in a school nursery a few weeks ago. We were watching some children, and they were a couple of boys with the chalk, and then another boy was watching them, and they were drawing noughts and circles and crosses on the floor, and they clearly had completely their own game situation, and they'd got this game with their own rules, which was very loosely based on noughts and crosses. I think it seemed to be if you could manage to draw 3 crosses before the other person drew a circle or something as part of that. And all of the adults there, we were absolutely desperate to sort of jump in and try and unpick the play and try and work out what was happening and ask them questions about it. But we were also acutely aware, because 2 children were then teaching another child or interacting with another child as part of that, that we risked stopping that play. So we sat and watched that play for quite some time, and the children were still playing with it later on, and then the practitioner told me that they were still playing it the next day, and in the next day she had that conversation with them and tried to take that learning on a little bit as part of that. I think it's really important to take time, and it is a luxury, but to take time to observe, not to jump straight in, to find out what the children are playing and what are their roles and intentions. And when we're joining in play, so when we're wanting to join in that playful activity with the children, whether it's the sand or the water, or whether it's jumping off a log outside as part of that, it's about thinking about whether you need to enter the play and for what purposes. And when they look at research about play, one of the things that they find is that sometimes for some children, play can become very repetitive, and it can become quite low level, because they're doing the same thing all the time and they're not necessarily being extended in terms of that. So there are definitely times that we do need to be able to intervene to take that play forward, or to add a new dimension to that play. But that doesn't need to be every time. So it's the importance about trying to play on a child's terms, following their instructions, playing alongside, talking about what you're doing, modeling, about only offering your own ideas if they're consistent with the flow of the play, and try not to take that free flow play that the child's in, that child initiated play, and then try and move it into your own agenda. But trying to go with the flow of the play, and we've all seen. I'm thinking of another example where I was walking. It was a school and a head teacher. I was walking around in early years, and some children were trying to drop. They were putting animals down a water chute effectively to get them going, and what they were focusing on is how much water did they need, with them pouring at the top to sort of get them to go out. And one of them was quite a big whale, a sort of plastic whale, and it was taking quite a lot of push to go down. And the head teacher I was walking around with was trying to get them to count how many there were, and they just weren't interested in counting. That wasn't the focus of the play at that moment in time. What was the focus of the play was about that language about water play, that language about size and about volume and about capacity, and what do you think, what would happen if, what do you think next as part of that. And that wasn't an appropriate moment to jump in with a sort of agenda. Oh, I wonder whether they can count 5 of these animals, because that wasn't going to be the biggest focus in terms of that. It wasn't a time for how many, what color are they, tell me about it, And I think it's that bit about, if your presence impedes the play, then back away gracefully. So I'm afraid that I didn't go and, well, I sort of sat there briefly, I think, being the switched off television, but as they moved their play on and sort of moved out of that area, obviously the television didn't move with them. It stayed there sitting in the home corner and switched off. Somebody put on at the beginning about the importance of about a number of the things that you put up about daily routines. So whether that's nappy changing times, or when children are coming in, or lunch times. And actually, if you're thinking about nappy changing, for example, and I was doing some work actually with a setting on nappy changing a couple of weeks ago, because they've suddenly got 2-year-olds, and they've had to really rethink what they do, and they've also got a lot more children who haven't been away from the home situation before as part of that. And it's that and so one of the things that we were looking at doing is how could we create a space that was appropriate for nappy changing, but also how could we use that as opportunities for adults not to see it as something that was a chore, but for how could they use it as opportunities to really engage and talk to the children as part of that. And so whilst some interactions will be planned, most of our interactions with children are minute by minute, and there's lots and lots of opportunities within daily routines to talk to children. And I think it's that an example might be children might be going to wash their hands before lunch, for example. And so, you know, is it just that really functional? Now go and wash your hands, you washed your hands, good, come and sit down, do this, do that. Or do we take that as an opportunity to have a conversation with children about their family, about what they're doing, about what they like as part of that, about when they're having snack time. We think about, you know, those conversations, the kind of things that we've just seen in that video about food, and you know, talking to the children about that, about thinking about how we plan into it, about those times for not just always having big group times, but thinking about how we plan for small conversations, one-to-one conversations, 2-to-1, or really small groups of children, rather than always maybe trying to talk to a bigger group of children. And about thinking about how we plan the day to make sure there's blocks of sustained time for that that independent play in which adults can engage in conversations with children. And it's also about adults realizing that it is just as valuable, and you might even say maybe more valuable, to be sitting talking to a child about you know, pouring water in the water tray with them, and talking to the children is just as valuable as trying to sit down and make and write with children, or doing something like that. You know, it is that importance of that conversation with children is the most important thing as part of that day. So about thinking about, are we maximizing every possible opportunity to talk to children? And one of the things that someone told me when I first became a teacher, which I would remembered, and I had 34 children in one of my reception classes once, and I was the only adult in there. And one of the things that I was told as a teacher is that on the Friday of every week to write down the list of all of your children in your class, and those 6 who come at the bottom need to be your focus for the next week. I always did that when I was a teacher, and I think that's really important. It's about making sure that you give some one-to-one time to not just, you know, to all of the children, because some of the children get to be the forgotten children because they fall well into routine and they comply with what's being done. But how do we make sure that we manage to have those conversations? And it's about remembering that for some children, they might not be getting that conversation anywhere else. Some children will be getting really quality conversations at home and from family. But for some children, you might be the only time they're getting that really quality conversation. So think about how you can make that time. Think about, one of the things I always used to think about is really making sure that I knew personal things about every single child. And that's easier when you're working with small numbers of children. But if some of you are in really large settings, then, you know, there's going to be a lot of children. But what do I know about that child? Do I know the name of their dog, of their brother? Do I know where they go with grandma? Do I know what it is they like to do? So that we can link it back to that experience. And it all comes back to that importance of relationships being at the center of interactions. This is a school, this is their reception class, but their nursery actually looks the same. And the reason that I put this in is about the importance of reading with children and not just telling stories. And this is something that I'm quite passionate about. So what we see a lot is that there's a real difference between staff reading a book to a child or a group of children, or sharing a book with an adult. And when we go back to that research, it said that actually some of the more limiting conversations was when adults were reading stories to children rather than sharing a book with an adult. And one of the most powerful things that we can do is sharing books with children and making sure space. So the reason that this, and they were actually part of a funded project by the DFE to look at how to create spaces across the school, not just in their early years. So one of the things that they did as part of this is they put a sofa in that had space for adults and children to sit and share books together. You can see how nicely the books are presented. They've thought really carefully about what they want. The basket of books at the front has books that the adults read aloud to the children as part of a class, because it's a reception class, but also those same books are in that book area, and the of sitting to children. And we're going to look at a video of some adults sharing books with children, rather than that sort of, now I'm going to read you a story, let me hold the book up and this is what it is, as part of that. And that importance of getting that dialogue and that conversation. And this is a school that also has a lot of children with English as an additional language as well. And they've really noticed the difference where they've said to adults in their nursery reception, it's really important that you sit in this area, you share books with children, and conversation that's going place about that book. So we're going to have a look at an example, and in the example we're going to have there's been a thunderstorm in the garden. I just noticed it says my internet connection's unstable. Hopefully it will hold up. There's been a thunderstorm in a garden, and the children have come in, and the adults looking for a book to read them, to share, is about to share a book with them. So as we go through with this video again, think about what you notice about the adult interaction with the children and what's making this successful.
That has thunder in it. Would you like to hear the story? Know what it's called? The snail and the whale. And then they go to a place under sea.
We have shark teeth.
We do have shark teeth.
But babies don't have shark teeth. Not when they get back. When I was small, I didn't have teeth.
You were doing that when you were born. And then they grow. Not all of these creatures have shark teeth. What are you looking at?
This.
My sandals?
Oh no!
That's my leg. Like, this is a leg.
This is a leg.
Like, that's a leg. There's not many creatures that have this in the picture. I can see one with claws. I think that's a lobster.
Don't have that.
Goats have legs. Do sharks have legs? No.
Wings.
Fins. Fins. Do starfish have legs?
No. Yes, look.
Hmm. Hmm. What about sea urchins? Do they have legs? Okay, where are they going next? They've been to the jungle, under the sea, to... This is the one you were telling me about. Oops. Not there. Okay, so the water looks very calm. There's no rain coming.
Yes.
And there it comes. Makes a start. And look at the lightning in the sky and the waves crashing against the rocks. They're not flat anymore. They're crashing. Look, the whale's going a bit further down into the sea. Do you think it's hiding? Do you think the whale likes thunder? No.
No.
No, he doesn't. What about snail? Does snail like thunder?
But snails don't like thunder.
Don't they?
But parrots like thunder.
Parrots. Some people like thunder. Do you like thunder, dog?
Not when I'm sleeping.
Oh, not when she's sleeping.
If it's the daytime, I don't mind. That's great.
But big ones like thunder.
Do you mean grown-ups? Some do, some don't,
But
Heidi.
little ones don't. But we're still little. But we have got them. Growing up.
And when you're grown up, what do you think you might like thunder more?
No,
Not going to change your mind. That you've
Stop.
grown, you're
Stop.
it has stopped. It's moved on somewhere else. Stopped here. Has it stopped in our pictures? I'll turn it over. Stopped.
Yeah, there's no thunder.
No, there's no thunder here. There is a very big brown bear.
So using the chat again, what did you notice in that video? So we've got letting the children ask questions, following the children's lead. She didn't just read the story, she let the children lead the reading. Yes, and that's the temptation, is that you sit there and you start the story at the beginning and you go through the story and you're telling the story, but actually she didn't tell the story. Yes, she didn't read the story page after page to answer questions, talking about the pictures. The way she read it and was looking at the pictures, yes. I thought was really interesting. She spoke to another adult in it and asked them their opinion, because it's really important that children see us modelling how to talk to other adults as well as part of that, as part of our conversations. So it's really important that we model conversations with other adults. Anything else? I think that she'd it explained it. I think I said at the beginning, she'd chosen that story. So they clearly knew that book well. She'd chosen that story because there'd been some thunder and the children had been scared by it. So she was talking about their immediate experience at the beginning as part of that, expanding their vocabulary. Yes, even if it was something as simple as explaining the leg. And I think she was pointing to the leg on the table, on the sofa that she was sitting at, being the same as the leg, her and the little girl's leg as part of that. Yes, so opportunities to expand that vocabulary. I also really liked the way that the second child, it was really focused on that one child, wasn't it? The second child looked really tired to me, and she was sort of watching, and you do get some children who watch, don't you? So the second child was there, but she wasn't forcing that second child into a conversation as part of that. She was holding the conversation with the first child. The second child was sort of watching and listening and absorbing that, but she wasn't being pulled into that conversation at that point. But again, I think it comes down to knowing the relationships with the children, having the time, having the environment that gave that quiet place. Sorry, having that environment that gave that quiet place to be able to sit down with the children as part of that as well.
Would you like to hear the story?
So somebody talked at the beginning about the importance of non-verbal interactions, and in both of the videos that we've seen, I think so far, we've actually seen some really good examples of some non-verbal interactions as well. And so that really affirmative response where in all of those, the adults, and I don't know whether you saw in the one when she, in the dining, where they were dining together, she sort of put her head at that point where she was like really reflecting and thinking. So, you know, really showing that from the body language that she was listening really carefully to the children, about showing that affirmative response, about nodding to children, about really showing that you're an active listener, about showing that concentration and respect, and going with the interests of the children, I think was quite important. When the child wanted to go off and talk about the legs, she didn't say, oh no, we're not doing that now. She bent down and she looked and she showed interest through her body language in terms of what the child was doing. The importance, and you know, this is something that we just do and is innate in everything we're doing, but being down at the same level as the child, you get a much better level of conversation if you're down at the same level of the child, rather than if you're sort of bending over to talk to them as part of that. So the importance about getting down to the same level as the children as well. And really, there's some copying of actions as well. When the children did some of the actions, nodding in agreement, the tone of voice, a really interested tone of voice in terms of that. And so showing that genuine interest through words, through body language, through facial expressions. We're going to have a quick break for about 5 minutes. So if we come back at just after 22, if you just want to grab yourself a quick cup of coffee, or just take a quick brain break. When we come back, we're going straight into another video, which is the longest of the videos we're going to look at. So if you just take about 5 minutes, you don't need to sign out or anything, and I'll see you back in a few minutes. We'll start again in about a minute. So if you could just indicate if you're back in the chat or... Hi. Hello, brilliant. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll start screen sharing again. So the next video that we're just going to go and have a look at is it's really interesting. So this is what Siren Film suggests that you should have a look at is cues to show what the children are interested in. So this is quite an interesting one to look for non-verbal body language as well as spoken language. How are the children learning? How the adult activity supports the children's learning. It's a really interesting video. It is quite long and it has different parts to it. I don't want to explain too much because it's slightly unusual and quite fascinating in many ways. So I'll leave you to it. But the same idea. When you're looking at it, think about what it is that the practitioner's doing in this session, which is enabling those really high quality interactions, but maybe also have a think about what is it in the way this setting is organized in terms of its time and its sort of organization that's enabling this as well. So
Fantastic. Well done. Pop it in there. That's it. Wait, you want to have a go, do you, Jamie? That's it. And you want to have a... Oh, you watch. Jamie does it. And you have a go as well, Jacob, in a minute. Oh, right. Where's it going to go next? Where's it going to go next? Round and round, backwards and forwards, where is it? Ooh. Oh. Happened, Jamie? What does that feel like, Jamie? Whoa! Do you think it would be easier to do on the floor, on the table? What do you reckon? On the table. That's okay. Whoa! Well done. Lovely. You want to put that one back in there? Wow. That's fantastic. Would you like to have another go, Carl?
Yeah.
Okay, which end would you like to choose?
No.
Oh, great. I wonder where you're going to put that one. Quite tricky to get it out, isn't it? That's what's in the pot there. It looks like water, isn't it? But is it water or is it paint, do you think?
Water and pink.
Water and pink. Oh, right. Water and pink. Yes, I think it is. If you stir it with a fork, will it all mix in? No, that's how we made the paint. We made the paint with water and pink so that it could go on the egg. And now you can roll the egg. Well, if you break it, do you think it will still roll?
Yeah.
You think it will?
Yeah.
Well, you try it and see. Try rolling it now. Okay. And then what will happen if you break it? Ah, we do quite often break it and eat it if we have a boiled egg for our breakfast, don't we?
Yeah.
But would we want to eat that one, do you think?
It didn't stop when we draw the paint off.
We'd have to get the paint off. That's true, we would. But we wouldn't eat that one because it's been rolling around in lots of the paint. And we wouldn't want to eat the paint, would we?
Yeah, really pink, like yellow, that.
Well, we can make the pink and the yellow mix up, but we could have a go at doing it by rolling the egg if you want to. How can we make the egg roll?
We can put some of this on it.
Right, and then how could we make that egg roll when you put the paint on it, I wonder?
You
Oh, Jamie's got an idea.
no, it's not like that. I wanted it
With
like
that fork,
that. Yeah.
like that. Oh, that looks lovely, doesn't it? Then you can choose where it goes, can't you?
Yeah.
So which way are you going to make the egg go next?
This way.
That way, right across the paper, up. You're going to go up to the top or down to the side?
Oh yeah.
That's to the side.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll put some more paint on the egg. Which way round should we do that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you could try it, couldn't you, and see what happens? Okay. Doing it very carefully, aren't you? Quite tricky to get that yellow off, isn't it? But you put a bit more on. Oh, you'd like to have a turn, would you? Okay. All right, so what are you going to do with that now? Oh, now if you've moved it away. Whoa, 2 eggs. You're painting the tray now, and you're making the eggs do the painting, aren't you?
Rachel, the sound's gone off a little bit. It's gone a bit juddery.
Oh,
We can't hear the sound. Don't know if you want to stop and start it again or
I will do.
try that.
I apologise for that. I'm going to try to do it again. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you absolutely fine. It's just the video, the
Right, it's
sound
just the
from the video.
yeah, okay. Sorry. Is
No,
that any
don't-
better?
Don't worry. It's frozen altogether. Just give it a minute.
All right.
Clicks in. Sorry, it's not.
Oh, don't worry. I'm going to just swap the hang on a second to the other connection.
First.
Which one?
Which one's your one?
That one.
That one. Okay, tip it up and see if it gets to the other end first. Whoa!
Really?
It didn't win. Oh, which one won?
That one.
That one. Oh, do you think we should have another race? What about those 2 there? Which one's going to win there?
One did.
Your one did. Jamie, do you want to see if you can race them back again? Which one came down the hill first? That one on that side. And which one? Oh,
So big.
Well, you could have another race and see which one wins this time. Oh, dear. All right. Now, Jamie, what should we do with our lovely painting? Oh, wow, what's inside? Inside. Oh, what does it smell like to you? It is like scrambled egg, you're right. Jamie, what do you think it smells like? It is an egg. That's right. Now, it's a hard-boiled egg, that one, Kyle. Because I boiled it and I made it go hard inside so that we could roll them. So you're right, it does smell like scrambled egg, but it's a bit different from scrambled egg because it's hard-boiled. Okay?
It's a baby chicken.
Sorry?
Got a baby chicken.
No, there's not a baby chicken inside that one.
What's inside?
Inside? Can you remember what's inside?
It's scrambled egg.
It's like scrambled egg. Yes, Jamie, can you remember what's inside?
Hard-boiled egg.
A hard-boiled egg and a hard-boiled egg. Shall we put it in here and I'll show you what's inside? A hard-boiled egg has got the white bit. Look, but I don't know if it'll be white because of all the paint. Okay, it's got the white bit. Do you remember another word for the white bit?
Albumin.
Albumin, that's right. That was the word we learned, wasn't it? Albumin. No, look, we're going to finish looking at this one. So what's inside the white bit, do you think? Can you remember what it's called inside the white? Can you remember, Carl? There's the yolk inside it. Shall I show you where the yolk is, Kyle? Okay, I think I need to use this spoon handle to show you. Right. I want to show you the inside. Right, we're just going to look now and smell, but we're not going to eat it because it's got paint on it. So this bit here is called the yolk. You smell it. And this bit is called the white bit, and that's called albumin. And it's gone all hard because I cooked it in a pot.
Okay, I do apologise that if you couldn't if you couldn't see that very well. But again, using the chat, what did you notice in terms of the way the practitioner supported the interactions with the children as part of that? And was there anything that you sort of reflected on in terms of the organisation of the setting that enabled that?
Fantastic. Well,
modelling language, there was some really ambitious language, wasn't there, when she talked about the albumin? And they'd clearly talked about it before, because she said to them, do you remember in terms of that? Open-ended questions. She allowed them to test out their ideas. Yes, very specific praise. Yes, all of those things. She did allow them to test out their ideas. He was very determined. Right at the beginning of that video, he suggested that they were going to crack the egg. And she didn't say, no, we're not going to crack the egg, but she didn't support him in doing it at that point either. And one of the interesting things was that there was clearly, the video was clearly edited as well. So it was clearly much longer than that. Explaining what was happening. Yeah, she started off doing the little song, didn't she? The backwards and forwards song as part of that. And you're right, she demonstrated. Yeah, the area for the small group, I thought that, and not a lot of children around, and quite calm and quiet. I agree with that. I think that, I mean, it's really hard. Obviously, the cameraman was there because at one point the children started interacting with the cameraman. But, and of course, you know, it was being filmed. You don't know whether that's typical. But what was interesting was that being able to concentrate on just a couple of children for a longer period of time, and really one child, it was a little bit like the other one, wasn't it? There was one child and then another child sort of dipped in and out in not quite the same way. So I think it's allowing the time for that. And it is a luxury when we have lots of children with us in terms of that it was a calmer and a quieter place. We could see the busy children in the background as part of that. You're absolutely right. And you've put developing their thinking skills. I thought it was really interesting that she definitely let it flow. There were some points where it was quiet and it was okay to be quiet as part of that. She had really good eye contact with them. She bent down when she came right next to him and bent down and was looking at him and showing a real interest in terms of the eye contact and the engagement with him. That she asked questions like, I wonder how and why, you know, as part of that. So trying to develop those critical thinking skills. Yes, you've put linking into the previous learning, and we saw, as I said, album at the end, they'd obviously learnt it as vocabulary. I also like the way that she didn't overcorrect. So obviously he said yellow as lello, and she could just have jumped in, couldn't she, to correct him as part of that. She modelled the right way to say it once, I think, or possibly twice, but actually he said it a number of times. But she didn't jump in to correct his language, because that might have closed the activity down. So great. Thank you so much for your input. I apologise if you couldn't see it very well. When you get the PowerPoint sent out, which will be after this, then the links are all in there. And as I said, you can sign up for a 30-day free account with Siren Films, and also the hub has some logins, which I think they'll be able to share with you as part of that as well. So please do have another look at it, and I do apologise that we lost it a little bit there in terms of that. Really important thing about planning for vocabulary. There's a lot of focus on vocabulary at the moment, and about how it talks about the 3 tiers of vocabulary. And one of them is sort of those everyday languages that are familiar to most children through conversation. And some of that's the functional words that children need to survive in an early years setting. So book or yellow or car or table or chair. But I've certainly worked with 3-year-olds who don't know that vocabulary, so you have to teach it them right from the beginning. And the next level of vocabulary is really looking at that vocabulary that children are going to encounter in different situations. So we saw a little bit of it when we saw leg, and they related it to the leg in the chair. And then the third part of that is that really specific vocabulary. And actually, it says in early years that we need to teach children all of these things. So we need to explicitly teach them some vocabulary. We need to pick up on those examples for incidental learning. So where, for example, the little girl talked about her leg, picking up and extending that as part of it. And we really need to develop that word consciousness and teach children about words. And so I've put some examples down the side of some words that we might think about when we're using sand, for example. So about touching and feeling, and a lot of these words are applicable in the sand, but they're applicable in other contexts as well. And children need to know that trickle could be used in a lot of different contexts, for example. Or dig could be used in different contexts. Or a grain, we can have a grain of sand, but we can have a grain of rice as part of that. So it's really important that children develop that vocabulary in different concepts. And this is a really simple thing. What this is a nursery, what they do is they it's not about, and it's really clear, a language-rich environment isn't about sticking up signs which children can't read and only adults can around the setting, but it's about having meaningful opportunities for vocabulary. So what this setting does is that it's just a laminated sheet of A4, if you can see it in there, and all that they do each week is they write on the words that they want the adults to try to use in that particular area. So this is their home role play, and they've written imagination, pretend, story, character and setting. But it might be, because it wipes on, wipes off, that they might have read a story the day before and they might just go and write that on this key vocabulary, and they have the same in different places around the setting, and they make the notes of it. And sometimes it might be individual to an individual child, that actually yesterday we were using the word squash with Joe, and he was really struggling with that, so can we keep on trying to use that vocabulary with them? Or maybe yellow with the little boy we've just seen on the video, to use that in terms of it. So a really simple way. It isn't about flooding the environment with words that children can't use, but focusing in on what's the vocabulary that we want to concentrate on, and not being afraid to use that really specific vocabulary. So it's not a shell. What is it? Is it a mussel? Well, it is a shell, obviously, but is it also a mussel or a razor clamp or a whelk? So starting to use that really specific vocabulary with children right from the beginning. We're going to look at just the start of this video. This is another one.
Learn from books expands as they begin to make up their own stories and experiment with the language they hear in books.
Into the light of the night kitchen, where the bakers are baked till the dawn, so we can have cake in the morning. Mix Mickey and batter, chanting. What did I say again?
Milk in the butter, milk in the butter.
Stir it, scrape it, make it,
Bake it, put it in the oven.
and they put that batter up to bake a delicious Mickey.
Seb's listening both to the plot of this story and the sounds of the words.
It's going to be found away.
Yes, isn't it? So he skipped from the oven and into bread dough, all ready to rise in the kitchen. And he kneaded and punched it and pounded and pulled.
During his play, he makes up his own bakery and draws on the language he's heard from the book.
Minced it, punched it, squeezed it, and kneaded, and punched it, and kneaded. And then put it in the cute. We put it in the wire. We put it in the wire. Because we couldn't have it that.
Now,
Oh,
what
wow.
happens when children have recognizable words and they feel at ease with their language?
So that was just a really short video, because I was talking earlier about opportunities in Play-Doh, and that was obviously a little boy at home. But you saw him taking the language from that story, that language around the dough, and using it in terms of his own independent play. Sorry, I was just going back to check the oh, right. So I was just going back to check the chat because I saw it coming up. Can see about the license going through as part of that. Brilliant. Okay, so I've just talked about open and closed questions, and I think there was a comment earlier about the use of open and closed questions. And sometimes we need to ask closed questions. Sometimes they can be really appropriate if we're asking someone how many counters are there, or do you want the blue one or do you want the red one? It's absolutely fine to ask closed questions. But what we need to try to do is get that balance about thinking about how we can ask open-ended questions as well. And open-ended questions usually are those that encourage discussion and promote back and forth talk. And it talks about how for high quality conversations, we need to aim to have 4 turns each as a minimum in terms of the conversation. So sort of 4 backwards and forwards turns as part of that. And asking open-ended questions can promote and encourage that as part of it. So it's don't try to give control to the child. Don't try to assume too much about the activity or the situation, but ask a question about which which toy do you like to play with the most? So trying to get, and when the child replies on that, going into to ask them another question about it that's going to elicit that response from them as terms of that. And it's about really tuning into that child again. And it's just trying to move away from that the thing we talked about earlier about those functional questions about functions and routines, and trying to get into that deeper dialogue. So thinking about that difference between those open and closed questions. And when they looked in research, they found that the majority of questions were either other questions which related more around to processes and functions, and actually open questions that really encourage that dialogue was a really small part of what was being asked. But in the settings where the conversation and the interactions are highest, then they have more open questions and more opportunities for children to engage. So the how, what and why questions. She asked in that video, didn't she? I wonder, and what would happen if, and then at the end, you thought that. So recapping, you thought this was going to happen. Were you right? And why? Can you tell me more about it? I wonder what would happen if. How do you know? So thinking about those questions. And I did a little bit, a small project with it was a school nursery actually, last summer. And we just chose a couple of those questions and got those embedded with the practitioners, and they were all new to early years, all of the practitioners, and rather than sort of bombarding them, we just chose a couple of questions. So I wonder what would happen if, and we took a couple of questions each week and sort of said we're all going to focus on asking those questions, and within a few weeks they were much more confident with asking those questions, and they were asking those whole range of questions in terms of that. So sometimes it's just that prompt to get people doing that. So if we're looking at back and forth conversations, we've said that we need to aim for those 4 back and forths as part of that. And the benefit of those back and forth conversations is that it really allows us to provide those models of conversation for children, about extending their vocabulary and explaining those new words, about supporting them to help connect their ideas from one to another. And we're going to look very briefly at another video. So if it doesn't show, then do let me know very quickly.
And this was the treasure on Silver's map. I wonder what the treasure is on yours. Should we go and find it?
I can find mine over there.
Shall we go and see what Victoria's got?
I've got that treasure.
Wow, you've got one as well.
No, we need to follow Victoria.
We're going to follow Victoria. Do you want to have a turn afterwards?
I'm going to open it.
Are you?
It's golden bells.
Golden bells.
Yes.
We need to find Victoria. Where did Victoria go?
I'll show you go.
Oh, should we go? Quick. Where is she? Looks like a really big treasure.
It's a real one.
A real one. What's inside of a treasure chest? You know,
Like all the
is it stuck, Harry?
real one.
Oh, it's really stuck. So what's this? What have we got inside?
Treasure.
Treasure. What types of treasure? Oh, the treasure plate. It's real. The treasure plate. What would this be? A trophy. Good idea. Chocolate. Or what? What if they're not chocolate coins? What if they're real coins? Oh,
Chocolate coin.
you prefer chocolate coins
Different treasure. Somewhere else.
somewhere else?
You can
Well,
go
I think we were waiting because Stella's got another treasure map, and she said she was going to find some gold bones. But I don't know where they are because we've got to follow your map. Can you show us the way?
No. I know where they
Down
are.
the street?
No, no.
No, not down the street.
That's right. There's three.
Where's Treasure Street? Do you know? Oh, that one on there. Do you know where it is in the garden?
And this and over the river and through the cave.
Yeah.
And that's how we get to
Gentle on my head, honey. Gentle. Yeah.
And that's how we get to the treasure.
Oh, do you think you can show us where to go? Perfect. We're going to follow Stella. Go. Have a look. But look, Stella's all the way over there. Stella, did you find the river? Still going, we're still going. The shark. Shall we have a look again? Let's have a look at the map. Where are we now? Hide from the sharks. Oh, where are the sharks?
We need to go in our pirate ship.
He's got a pirate ship.
We need to go in our pirate ship.
In our pirate ship. We need to find
Mary,
out the ship.
Mary, hello, Mary.
Oh, hang on a minute. Remember, we were waiting to find Stella's golden bones. Did we find it? No. We're hiding from the shark now. So where could we go next? Shall we listen? Shall we listen to Stella and see what she's going to say? Because I think lots of us have had a turn, but we're waiting to see what the rest of Stella's map tells us. Where do we need to go?
Round the butterfly, and that's how we get to the treasure.
Oh, so we're nearly there.
Yeah.
How do we get round to the butterflies?
We need to run. You need to run.
We need to run. Where
Yeah,
do we need to
and
run?
you need to run across the crocodile before you. No, not the shark.
Are there crocodiles and sharks, Stella?
Yeah.
How do we get back to the butterflies?
We need to
You
run.
want to show us the way?
We need to
Let's
run
let,
around.
let Stella show us the way. Remember, it's her map. Let's see where she's going to take us.
Okay. We need to step over like this, and then.
Are we still stepping in? Crocodile, where's the crocodile?
No, you step in that.
Oh, I stepped on the crocodile. Am I okay?
Yeah.
That was close. Are we nearly there? We're nearly there.
Okay, so what did you notice in that one? Just type really quickly in the chat.
And this was the treasure.
Body language and expressions. He followed their lead. Yeah, that was really interesting, wasn't it? He rechecked the rules with them. So are we still stepping? You know, he wasn't saying this is what we're doing. He was checking with them all the time, and he checked back in about the sharks and the understanding, and that it was the little girl's game, and what were her rules in terms of that. Following their lead, engagement. Yeah, he was down on their level again as part of that. They were definitely leading the learning. Getting back everyone back involved with each other's and getting them to take turns. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that we just on the screen, giving Stella time. Yeah, didn't step on their toes and allowed them to do it their way. Yes, I agree with all of those. What we're sort of starting to come into now, I think, as we talked about a little bit at the beginning about that sustained shared thinking, and that genuine inquiry, and giving. So he did all of those things. He had this to and fro inquiry. He had this really collaborative approach to problem solving. Children had a chance to sort of review and think. There was lots of suggesting and wondering. He recapped and reflected at different points within it as well. And it takes us into this idea about this sustained shared thinking, this really high quality dialogue, where children and adults are working together to problem solve and to extend children's understanding through those interactions. So we're just going to look at another video. I suspect it's in the same setting, but the same question as we come back. What do you notice in terms of this one?
Okay, let's do it. Are you coming? Dining. More fire. Oh, it is hot, isn't it? Nice. Are you coming? It's on fire. Feel that? You feel the floor up here. It's like fire. No, not right. Does feel different to me. This bit's not hot. Why is this bit not hot? Yeah. Stop it. It was wet before. Oh, and that's why it's cooler. It's not wet now. By now. Why is it not so hot over there? It's more in the shade. Is there any of this in the shade? Anything over here that's blocking the sunshine? This, the wall, so the wall is stopping the sunshine getting here, and it feels colder or hotter? Colder. It's blocking the sunshine getting down to the floor here. That's why it feels colder. Should we go and see what it's like over there? Yeah, Celia's saying it's more in the shades there. What do you think about this side of the castle? We did. What do you think about this side of the castle, Stels? This bit is hot. So, why is this little bit here hotter? Where is the sun coming through?
The castle.
It's coming from over here, and it's also coming from the wind through the window.
Okay, so very quickly in the chat, what did we notice from that one?
Okay.
Yeah, so open-ended questions. Why is this a bit hot and why isn't it? Why do you think this is? Pausing for response. Yeah, he definitely went with the flow of the children, didn't he? In terms of the timing, he didn't try and push the learning, the learning forward. He definitely responded to what it was the children were suggesting and doing. Anything else? He asked others for the answer. Yeah, he checked a lot, didn't he, in terms of that? Interested. He showed that genuine interest in terms of it. Definitely got the children to expand their thinking, and he recapped on it when he was going through the bit. I mean, I think we all want a castle, don't we? That's I definitely made me decide it. You know, we definitely like one, but when he sort of pulled it at the end to get down to the bit where the why bit, when they were looking at where the shadow was. Yeah, down at their level, recapping what they said. Yeah, you're all absolutely right in terms of that. So if we really want to support that sustained shared thinking, it's about that importance of tuning into children, about listening to what they're saying, about looking at their body language, showing that genuine interest. We saw that. We saw in the first video with Stella and the treasure chest, we saw about really respecting children's decisions as part of that. about inviting children to expand. I really want to know more about this. We've seen in the videos about the recapping as part of that. It talks, if we look at really sustained shared thinking, about offering your own experience as well to children in terms of that, about clarifying the ideas. So he was definitely clarifying the ideas at the end when we looked about when he was talking about why it was hot and why it wasn't as part of that. About reminding them, you said that if this would happen, gave them encouragement, keeping them going as part of this. So all of these things on the screen are things that really help and support that sustained shared thinking. About speculating, when we went back to that picture where they'd got the vocabulary on the sheet, the other bit that you couldn't see in terms of that, they asked questions. So they said that their home role play, and that was Goldilocks, and it said something like, what would happen if Goldilocks hadn't run away? So, and here's one. Do you think the three bears would have liked Goldilocks to come and live with them as their friend? We've talked about those open-ended questions, and we saw a lot about modelling thinking, and we definitely saw a lot about modelling thinking in the example that had the eggs in it as well. Just going to finish tonight briefly on this. This is from the EEF, which is the Education Endowment Foundation. And if you look at this, this is a really simple way to do it. So they've started doing more looking at early years as part of that. Now, their primary area probably is schools in terms of what they engage with, but they've looked at what makes the biggest difference for children, and they've managed to distill it quite down to quite a small model about looking at how to get high quality interactions with young children as part of that. And so they talk about the Shrek model. So it's quite easy to remember as part of that. But they talk about the first part of it about sharing attention, showing a real genuine interest in what the child is doing, about getting down to their level, about letting you know that that you value what they're doing, and sensitively joining in their play as part of it. Then about responding to children. So we've got that joint engagement in place. It's about that sensitive and supportive, stimulative responses that are in place, that are adaptive. And I think we've seen that in all of the best practice videos that we've seen today, that the adults really responded to what the children were saying and what the children were doing, and the body language of the children, because they were really listening to the children. And about showing that you're listening to children through those verbal and those non-verbal signals that you're making to children, being really, really well aware of the body language, because that can either encourage a child or it can put a child off as part of that. About expanding on the conversation. So this idea about getting this rally, getting this to and fro of conversation, about getting those at least four high quality responses in as part of that, getting the adult following the lead of the child, but keeping that learning going, or keeping that conversation going. But it's also fine to have times of quiet within that. And we saw that within the egg video, where there was definitely some time where it was just quiet and then she came back in. She didn't talk and go in terms of it. And then it gives some examples about adding a few more words. So the child might talk about a dog, and you might go in to expand about it being a big or a small or a friendly or a brown dog as part of this. So trying to engage children's language and expand through what's being done. If a child had given a one-word response about a dog, how do we go forward and develop that? And then really going into that conversation with as many turns as possible in terms of that. So thinking about how we give children time to listen, how we give them time to think, and time to process. So it's not about just jumping in. It's about giving them time to respond, about scaffolding, if you want, about giving them that prompt. Oh, do you remember what about that? So giving them that thing, but giving them the time to think and respond to their to their responses for themselves, and about modeling the conversation as adults that we want children to be able to have as well, and thinking about using those questions which are really going to promote those open-ended questions that are going to make children think in terms of that. So in summary, I'd say that we interact every minute of the day with children. And it's really important that when we're planning for those, most of those interactions just happen on the spot, but we can plan for interactions. We can plan through the environment, and we can plan for how we plan the environment. We can think about how we plan time for adults. We can have a setting where we really value not only those group times, but those one-to-one conversations with children. We can think about how we use everyday routines to have opportunities to learn more about children, to build those relationships and be able to have those conversations. Thinking about the deployment of adults that allow time to have those one-to-one situations, those two-to-one, those small to groups situations, about thinking about how we want to develop the vocabulary with children, about thinking what words we want to use with individual children or with the whole group of children. And I think about not forgetting the importance of non-verbal interaction. You know, it's really, really important to show that we're interested and engaged in what children are saying. And I think that what is at the heart of this, what really helps us tune into children, is about the importance of knowing and valuing each child as an individual, and really recognizing that relationships matter and building up those relationships with children. So we've reached the end of our time. What I always say to people is to have a think about, and you might want to share it in the chat. If you do, that would be great. What's the one thing you're going to do next? What are you going to take away from this? And what's the thing you're going to think about in terms of your practice or in terms of your setting? So what's the one thing that you're going to take away next? If you've got any questions, either post them in the chat or speak up. I'm very happy to answer them. But thank you very much for your time tonight, and thank you for giving up your time to come this evening.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I really enjoyed that. Loved having the time to think and explore ideas with you. A really great stimulation and inspiration there. And thanks everybody to giving up their time. We'll get the we'll get the recording of this session out to you, because hopefully you can use that within your own setting with colleagues to get that conversation going, and we'll be following up with you on Siren Films. But thanks, Rachel, that was spot on. Really